to show a little bit of appreciation for my son. Basically, just all that he's endured in the past several years as a cancer survivor, as a person in the prime of his life and the prime of his youth, to come to a place of complete success and even conquering something as big as cancer. And I never really told the journey or even said how it affected me. I never said that. But, as a mom, no one wants to hear the words cancer. No one wants to hear that. But as a mother, no one wants to hear it even more. I remember when I first heard about it, of course, it was I was in Paris, France, and I was in the heart of my modeling career, and just kind of thought it was something. You don't think cancer. You definitely just think it's you know a virus or just something. He got bit by a bug. I think that was one of the things we were thinking, that he had gotten bit by a bug, or it was some sort of reaction to something. We just had no idea that he was as sick as he really was. Basketball coaches were the ones to find this out, to kind of figure it out that this was worse. At that point in his life, he was in high school. He was in high school, and he was a jumper. He was a basketball player on the basketball team, and he was a jumper. He was a dunker, and it was to the point where his dunks were so incredible that other students were literally step back and videotape him to see his dunks. Vince Carter, which is somebody that he looked up to, he was rivaling him, and just doing anything that he saw Vince Carter do, he was mimicking, and doing them, and actually very successful. And it was to the point where coaches and scouts were taking a look at him. They were very interested in him. It was just a very good time in his life. It was a very key pivotal point in his life that could have given him a scholarship to college, that could have just taken him very far. And it was abruptly cut short. He started having these bumps on his leg. They were like dark spots. To me they look like giant moles. And I remember him kind of saying them to me, Mom, I got these spots on my legs, and I don't know what they are. And I remember, of course, thinking, what did you do? What did he get himself into? But never once did I think cancer. One of his coaches actually told him to go to the school nurse, and they looked at it and were just kind of like, we don't know what this is, but we're not sure. We don't. They weren't alarmed, but they didn't like it. They didn't think it was a good thing. His father took him to the doctors, and initially they said skin cancer. Yeah. And I remember thinking, skin cancer, what? He was 16 years old. He was a kid, skin, what? We don't, black people don't get skin cancer. What do we, so they did. They cut from his leg, and they just did a horrible job, a horrible hack job of his leg. He just looked like he had been eaten by a shark. I mean, it was horrible. They just cut, they just did a terrible job, to be honest. And in my opinion, did more damage than help. Kind of came back to us, kind of doing a biopsy on the actual cancerous thing that they had found, and turned out it was worse. It was a lot worse, and it was in the bone. And that's when the nightmare just began. In the middle of a lot of this, I'd come back to the country. I'd come back to America, and while I was back, was rebuilding because I wasn't planning on moving back to the US. I was actually planning to live the rest of my life in Paris, France. So I had no plans on being back in the US. So now I'm back and had to, start all over again. So that was literally starting from scratch. I ended up in Hollywood and was doing what I knew to do. That was my career. So I was getting my stuff together there, and at the same time flying back and forth to Florida to still do HSN shows, and on top of that would go see Devin, which at this point we had gotten him in Vanderbilt Hospital. Initially, the hospital that he was at before, they wanted to amputate his leg. They literally had just kind of written him off as a way to preserve life. They wanted to amputate, and I was just like, absolutely not. So I remember taking him from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and bringing him down to Vanderbilt Hospital, which by that point we had already given Vanderbilt the paperwork. And Vanderbilt took one look at his paperwork, and they were like, there's absolutely no reason for him to amputate his leg off. We have no reason to do that. Like, we can fix this. We can cure him. I didn't really know the name of the cancer. I didn't really need to know the name of it, but I knew that it was a rare cancer. I knew that there had only been, at that point in his life, there had only been maybe one or two other kids around his age that had it. And judging by the way the doctors were kind of describing things, I don't think the kids made it. Doctors were very optimistic. I have a cousin who was a doctor, and it was very helpful to have her on board with me and with us because she would speak to the doctors as well. And it does help when you have a doctor family member with you because they can kind of keep the other doctors on their toes to do what they're supposed to do. So we had a little bit of a home court advantage type of feel to the situation, having a family member herself who was a doctor. We got him immediately on radiation initially, and the radiation was, just to kill off the cancer, which is at this point was just in this particular left leg. So they had cut away the cancer. His leg was just skin and bones. At this point, it had just gotten down to just atrophy. It was terrible. I mean, like, nothing about this was easy or fun. Of course, it's never fun, but it was just nothing about this was good. I'm commuting back and forth between Los Angeles, Florida, and Tennessee, for like 2 years, and I'm angry, because as a mother, you want to fix this for your kid. This was never supposed to be him in this situation. If anything, I would have expected it to be me or his father or something. Like, as a parent, you don't want to see your children suffer like this, period. You don't want to see your kids suffer at all, but you don't want to see them suffer like this, and there's nothing you can do about it. It was a tough time. I just remember it being extremely difficult trying to work, in two different cities across the country, flying back and forth, all out of my own expense, out of my own pocket, and then still having time to run up to see him or go to some of his doctor's visits with him, and just seeing how he was. I remember mostly just trying to keep his spirits up. I felt very responsible to keep him in a posture and in a place of keeping his morale, keeping his spirits up, and I noticed right away that he was getting very depressed, very sad. He had started losing a ton of weight. So my son's like 6'4", and he was like down to like 140 pounds, so when I saw him, I mean, he was just like skeletal, his skin had gotten just ghastly white, like he was never really like I'm very light, for my complexion, but his father is actually, has more color to him. So his father is more brown skin, like a true brown skin black man, and Devin, in my opinion, kind of was closer to his father's skin tone. And with this cancer, I mean, he was like lighter than me. It was devastating to see this, but I could never show him how the toll that it was taking on me. I knew that I had to remain in a place and in a posture where he never knew this is affecting me deeply. Like, this is devastating me. He didn't know the tormentive thoughts that I was getting, the fear that I was feeling, there's just the gut wrenching feeling of, I don't want to bury my son. And I've learned that with Devin, ever since he was little, he would, things would happen to him, and I would just try to keep a stoic look about me, even though internally I'm like freaking out. I would keep a stoic look about my face because I knew if I freak out, he's gonna freak out. So I carried that type of mindset into dealing with this whole thing with cancer, and just brought it into that element so that every time we would go to these doctor's visits, it was just like more bad news, more bad news, more bad. Like, it just never got better, Even though the doctors were incredible and they were super optimistic, otherwise, the reports just kept coming back worse and worse and worse and worse, and it was just like nothing was working. The radiation didn't work, so we got him on chemo, and the chemo was a different type of chemo than usual. It was like an oral pill that he would take, and he had to take it at a certain time, and then he had to eat it with food or something. It was just all these rules that had to go with taking these pills. And when he took that, I know one of his biggest concerns was he didn't want to lose his hair, and rightfully so. I think at this point he was like 18 years old, and he just didn't want to lose his hair. And I promised him that if he lost his hair, if his hair fell out, which chemo has a tendency to do, that if he lost his hair, I would lose mine. And I was willing to completely shave off all of my hair, even at the risk of agents, in Hollywood not liking it. I was willing to shave it all off, so that he didn't go through that alone. And instead of the chemo causing his hair to fall out, instead the chemo actually caused him to turn white. It turned everything white. So that's where he started to be, like I was saying, super lighter than me. Like, he was much lighter than I was. His hair had turned white. He had literally gray hair in his beard and his hair, and he carried it well. He just kept a sense about him that was really strong. But there was a point, when we just kept getting negative reports, negative reports, like nothing was coming back good. There was a point where I noticed that he had just, in my mind, started to give up. And I knew once you mentally give up, the rest of you will follow. I couldn't let him give up. I knew it was tough because I remember him saying to me one day, "It's okay, Mom. Um, it's okay. I'll be all right." Type of deal. And I was just like, "Oh, no. No. See, what we're not gonna do is give up." To watch your baby um, dying, and there was nothing you could do, nothing I could do to prevent that, to stop it, to keep it from going. It was nothing I could do about it. So he started to just kind of improve a little bit, meaning we got him on some wheatgrass, got him on some other things to help him, and I remember just an immediate turnaround. It was just like it went from just going completely down to just a switch, and everything switched and went the opposite direction. And even his doctors were kind of like amazed, like, "I can't believe, wait a minute, wait a minute, I know that your report said this, but now it's this, and we have documented x-rays proof that, one day he went in and he had tumors all through his legs, and now at this point the tumors had started to try to spread to his lungs. And then he started like on this wheatgrass and on these things, and suddenly those tumors were gone. I remember him calling me up that day because, like, at this point he had gone to the doctor's office, and I remember just like, oh God, I just didn't want to hear these doctors give me one more negative report. And he went to the doctor's office, and he went with my mom because I was working in Hollywood at that time. I had to get back for work, and he was he called me up and he was just like, Mom, you're not gonna believe this. So I'm like, bracing myself for more bad news, and he says, there's not one trace of a tumor in my leg. Gone. He said, right now, he said, I'm looking at the x-rays and the tumors are gone. And the doctors were completely baffled. Like, what do you mean? Like, because they had literally just seen him just like a week earlier, and his leg was just like riddled with tumors. And then they come back. He comes back, total new x-ray, and they're gone. Absolutely gone. And the doctors were like baffled, like they were out of the room trying to figure out if they maybe picked up the wrong x-rays, I'm sure, or something. But it was over. It was over. And from there, he really just dove into, I'm just going to go live my life. He started to get his color back. He started to gain some weight. He remained thin for a few more years after that. But he just, I really respect what he did. It was just like a mental check, like you know what, I'm done. I'm done. That's enough. Like it was like something in him just clicked and was just like, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. That's enough. I'm done with this. I'm out. And that's exactly what he did. And he left and he went and he came to Hollywood to live here in Los Angeles for a while. And he was just determined to go and take back whatever time or whatever life he lost. And that's exactly what he did. He came back clean. And even right now, his doctors are absolutely amazed at the fact that he's beat a form of cancer that typically has taken everybody else out. That's a miracle. So, you, Devin, I congratulate you for never giving up, for never quitting. You kept going. And one of the things that we kept saying was, keep going, keep going. And you did. And today you are able to go capture your life back and be an inspiration to anyone else out there who may have tested positive for cancer, may have come back with a negative report saying that they have cancer. There is hope. And I will say to you, as I've said to my son, keep going.